The session 2 will now commence. First, Mr. Kikukawa Jingo, Director General of Innovation and Environment Policy Bureau, Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, will give a keynote speech.
Good morning, and thank you very much for all and coming. And I'm very honored to have such many participants here, and also I think the online as well. And colleagues and friends and very distinguished guests and speakers. So I'm very happy to have such great opportunity to make a very brief, short keynote. はじめまして、経済産業
Hello, everyone. I am Kikukawa, Director General of the Innovation and Environment Policy Bureau at METI. I thank you for joining creating a GX startup ecosystem session today. I was really impressed by the discussion that I have just heard. The session of creating a GX startup ecosystem had some backdrops. April this year, senior advisor to U.S. President Podesta and then METI Minister Saito launched a ministerial policy dialogue for maximizing synergies between the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act and Japan's GX promotion strategy. And in addition to facilitating decarbonization technology investment in both countries, startup was regarded to be quite important for both countries, where we can collaborate very strongly. So that was the backdrop to the creation of GX Startup Ecosystem session today. I was in charge of this act, which is the Industrial Competitiveness Enhancement Act revision in June this year. A tax system to promote domestic production in strategic field system was created. And this will provide tax incentives based on production and sales volume of, for example, green steel and green chemicals from the proceeds of GX Economic Transition Bond. This is similar to what is provided by US IRA. So these will also be one of the big backdrops for forthcoming collaboration between Japan and the US. Today, key persons in this field will be discussing the importance of GX startups and keys to building autonomous ecosystem. We have high hopes that discussions today will inform our GX startup policies and for U.S.-Japan cooperation centered on GX. Japan's startup ecosystem is undergoing major changes. The previous government under Mr. Kishida in 2022 formulated a 5-year startup development plan and is, as I said, mobilizing tax systems and budget measures, which is over 1 trillion yen, or approximately $7 billion to promote startups. We are mobilizing all available policies. The number of startups in Japan has increased by 1.5 times over the past 3 years, exceeding 20,000. In addition, compared to 10 years ago, the amount of funds raised by our startups has increased tenfold to 1 trillion yen level. And unicorn-class startups have been born. Workforce in startup has reached 400,000. And the number of inflows from large companies to startups has also grown year by year, accounting for about 200,000 people a year now. So there is some dynamics. So we will make sure to create success cases and establish a strong and sustainable ecosystem in Japan. Japanese GX startups have accumulated related technologies which is well enough to possess significant growth potential, but internationally presence is quite low. Large-scale investments and long lead times required before successful commercialization and high business risks as they depend upon international policy trends are underdeveloped funding environment in Japan, a few of the challenges they face. And Japan also have various other challenges as well. To change this situation, with a budget of 300 billion yen, or approximately $2 billion for GX field startups, we will provide consistent support ranging from research and development support for technical Cs to business development support for mass production and scale, with an eye to social implementation. So we have built such a scheme, and also within that scheme, we are supporting international collaboration with overseas entities. And as I said, this year, there was a revision in Industrial Competitiveness Enhancement Act and Japan Investment Corporation, or JIC. The operational period of the JIC was extended to the end of March 2050. So they will be operated until the end of March 2050. JIC or GIC is expected to play a role from medium to long-term perspective in the growth and development of ecosystem for supplying risk money to such entities as startups and private equity. And it may be mentioned, GX Promotion Agency was established. They will be providing a finance guarantee. Now, lastly, but not leastly, as you saw these badges or pins, this is Expo for next year, World Expo next year. Next year, we have Osaka Kansai Expo will be held. To coincide with this, by bringing domestic startup stakeholders, we will hold a global startup expo in next September. Global players will be invited so that we can start creating ecosystem for startups. And before that, pre-event, Startup Horizon 2040 will be held on the 15th of next month, that is November 11th, in Osaka. So please make sure we will disseminate information about Japanese GX startups. So please be sure to attend. I'm having a very high expectation for the sessions to follow after my speech. And I hope that this event will promote collaboration between Japan and the US startups and companies.
Discussion further, and so among us, thank you very much. ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much.
Next, Ms. Catherine Elizabeth Monahan, Deputy Chief of Mission, Embassy of the United States of America, will give a keynote speech.
Konnichiwa. Kikuya-san, kyou wa koko ni o maneki.
Kikuya-san, thank you very much for inviting me here today. Good afternoon.
We try to deliver our messages clearly and at the beginning without a lot of words. So we often say we give the bottom line up front, or the bluff. Today, I'd like to deliver you the bottom line up front. Number one, investing in renewable energy is good for the economy. Number two, governments can and should use their economies of scale and procurement power to transform the electricity market. Renewable energy expansion will decrease electricity prices while saving our Earth. 3, the United States and Japan can lead the global clean energy transition together. We can do this. If not us, the first and fourth largest economies in the world, the two big democracies in the region, if not us, then who? When he took office, President Biden set an ambitious target of cutting emissions by 50 to 52% by 2030. He then signed the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act with a government-enabled but private sector-led approach. Its tax credits provide 10-plus years of policy certainty, incentivizing companies to think bigger, go faster, and make long-term decisions. And it's working. Since the Inflation Reduction Act was signed, the private sector has announced more than $270 billion in clean energy investments in the United States, creating more than 330,000 jobs. President Biden has also instructed the federal government to use the scale and procurement power to transform America's grid. With more than 300,000 buildings and 600,000 vehicles, the U.S. government is the nation's largest energy consumer. The federal government aims to use 100% carbon pollution-free electricity by 2030 and to achieve 100% clean grid nationwide by 2035. Cleaning up the grid is a crucial driver of economic growth across the United States, as available clean energy increasingly drives companies' investment decisions. And here in Japan, our embassy and the consulates were the first U.S. diplomatic facilities in the world to shift to 100% carbon-free electricity just last year. We are working together to transform our grid now while also investing in the technologies of the future and accelerating their commercialization. For example, our Department of Energy oversaw $21.5 billion in bipartisan infrastructure law funding for clean energy demonstration projects. These projects test the effectiveness of innovative technologies in real-world conditions, employing private-public partnerships to pave the way toward commercialization and widespread deployment. The U.S. General Services Administration, GSA, is piloting new building technologies in federal facilities and is working with the Department of Energy's national labs to evaluate the real-world results. This collaboration is driving down operational costs and transforming the market. It has already helped 30 new technologies overcome the valley of death and reach commercialization. And the U.S. Defense Department is conducting demonstration projects for new energy technologies at its facilities and is investing in commercial solutions that enhance the security and economic competitiveness, and our economic competitiveness. Japan's GX promotion law, GX promotion law, like the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States, takes a government-enabled but private sector-led approach. And working together on our clean energy transitions is our leader-level of priority between President Biden and Prime Minister Kishida. And I was just talking to Kikukawa-san about the Ishiba administration's policy as well. So we are together on this. Our global partnership promotes shared vision of progress and prosperity for the future. We aim to advance innovation, strengthen our industrial bases, and build the strategic emerging industries of the future. When Prime Minister Kishida visited Washington in April, the United States and Japan launched a new ministerial dialogue to maximize synergies between the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act and Japan's GX promotion law. The dialogue furthers our shared efforts to accelerate progress this decade, strengthen our clean energy supply chains, and improve the competitiveness of our businesses. Through our government policies, our cutting-edge researchers, and our forward-looking businesses, Japan and the United States are positioned to lead clean energy transition globally. I'm excited to hear today from leading US and Japanese startups, venture capital firms on how government and the private sector can work together to make clean energy and renewable energy our choice for the future and our children's future. Remember the bluff. Number one, renewable energy is good for the economy and the environment. Number two, it's cheaper. Number three, we can do this together. If not us, then who? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Monahan. Now we will move on to the panel discussion 2, creating a GX startup ecosystem. The moderator of this session is Ms. Matsumoto Chikako, Managing Executive Officer of Sumitomo Mitsui Trust Bank Limited. Now I'd like to ask Ms. Matsumoto to moderate the session. Ms. Matsumoto, please.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Session 2, the panel discussion on creating a green transformation startups ecosystem. Before we start the discussion, I'd like to share a little bit of key information and numbers related to the GX technologies and the state of the Japan GX startups. So could you please pull up the presentation? Yes, thank you. The first slide, the number 35%. This is the number according to the IEA's Net Zero Roadmap report, which was published September last year. So as it says, 35% of the CO2 reductions required for the 2050 net zero would be expected to come from technologies, innovative green transformation technologies that are not yet available in the market. So it means that we need to develop, pilot, and commercialize such innovative technologies as soon as possible. And then time is now for us to provide sufficient funding effectively, and then also create and strengthen an ecosystem to support that activities. And the Japanese government has appropriated a budget of about 1.3 billion US dollars, about 200 billion Japanese yen, to support this initiative. The next slide. So let's look at some more numbers. In this slide, on the graph on your left side, it is really clear that the US by far leads the GX startups investment, and then followed by China and Europe. When you look at also in terms of the numbers of the GX startups, it is also the US which leads the world by about over 1,800 startups in the field of the GX. And then in Japan, we have less than 100 GX startups. So with the new government funding coming in to be deployed over 5 years, we are really keen to learn from the US leading examples. And then, so this is really a key theme of this panel discussion. And then today, we have invited both capitalists and GX startup entrepreneurs, both from Japan and the US. And then let me now introduce our panelists. starting from your far left, Mr. Shinya Shimizu, he is founder and CEO of Elephant Tech. And then Ms. Tomoko Numata, she's a chief capitalist of JAFCO. And then Georgy Egorov, he is a CFO of Zero Avia. And then we have also a special panelist on the screen participating from the West Coast USA, Mr. Shuo Yan. He's a founder, Lower Carbon Capital. So with these 4 panelists, first I'd like to ask a question to all of them, the same question. The questions are that what are the opportunities and then challenges do you see as a capitalist and or startups in the areas of the GX startups and then also ecosystem? You can also talk about specific stages, whether it's a seed or the pilot or the commercialization, or you can talk all through the stages. And then if you could also add a brief self-introduction about yourself and the company at the beginning, we would really appreciate. So let's start with Shinya, please.
Hi, nice to meet you guys. So I'm Shinya, the founder and CEO of Elephant Tech. So I'm gonna quickly introduce my company and I'm going to share my challenges and opportunities, which are, of course, huge. So could you, all right, thank you. We are one of the only 96 Japanese GX startup. I didn't imagine that the number that small, but we're one of the companies that is commercializing, that is solving the 35% of emissions. That is depending on the technology that is not commercially available now. So we are solving a specific issue that is carbon emission and environmental impact of electronics industry. Electronics industry has a huge carbon footprint and environmental impact. We are solving printed circuit boards issue. So printed circuit boards has actually a huge carbon footprint. For example, out of laptop manufacturing, 25% of carbon emission is from printed circuit boards. From smartphone, 30% is printed circuit boards. Out of Apple's total carbon footprint, including their travel, including the data center, 10% of carbon footprint is coming from PCB manufacturing, so which is huge. But so far, there's no new technology that is solving the decarbonization, achieving decarbonization of PCB industry, but that's exactly what we are doing. The reason why the existing PCB industry is that bad for environment is the manufacturing mechanism is really bad for environment. Conventionally, the PCB has been manufactured by subtractive way, which means you first form a layer of copper and dissolve unnecessary part from the copper foil, which is literally a subtractive way, which is apparently bad, right? So its material efficiency is incredibly bad. So, but as long as you are using this method, we cannot reduce the material and carbon footprint. So we have invented a kind of completely game changer technology that is pure additive manufacturing, which means we are using copper, kind of nanotechnology to make copper into nano-sized ink, nano-sized copper and make it ink and then print it. That's it. So which is purely additive. This is a true game changer because this not only reduce carbon footprint, copper usage, but also reduce cost because it saves a lot of material. But it's not easy, honestly. So this technology itself has been existing for 50 years, but no one has commercially mass-produced this technology. And I have actually spent more than 10 years on this. And we have recently successfully done world's first commercialization of this printing-based PCB manufacturing. Decarbonization is definitely a huge follow-wind for us. That we have closed a huge MOU with Lighton, which is a large laptop keyboards manufacturer. They actually globally a fourth of global laptop keyboards are manufactured by Lighton, and we have closed a MOU with Lighton to replace half of them. So literally 1/8 of global laptop keyboards are going to use our PCBs, so which is a great deal. So this is, truly followed by, strongly supported by a decarbonization factor. So which is really, in addition to that, so we are the only company that is mass producing this technology because of our scientific advantage. So this is exactly the opportunity of GX startup. We're a Japan-based startup. I'm born in Japan, grew up in Japan. Don't have any experience in the United States, but we are the only company on the earth. So most of the clients, the first contact with most of the clients are cold email to our website, actually. So we're looking for this type of technology, and you are the only one on the earth that is doing this, which means we can naturally expand globally, without any kind of localization or bubble issue, so which has a huge potential. But for challenges, we have raised like 100 million in total in 10 years. But honestly, this is game-changing technology. We're gonna replace 100 billion of PCB market. So this business itself should have been raising like 100 million at Series A, not 100 million in 10 years. But in Japan, because of the fund size, Japan's fund size itself is really kind of not as big as one in the United States. So it's not realistic to raise like 100 million at Series A, at least at the time when I founded this company, but which is a kind of challenges, I guess. So yep, that's basically good for all. That's basically all for me. So
thank you. It was a great success story to share. Thank you so much. So next, I'd like to ask Tomoko, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tomoko Numata from JAFCO. Could you put up the slides, please? So we are a typical Japanese VC, so maybe I can give you some introduction of JAFCO itself. So we were founded in 1973, so this is our 51st year in this business. We have invested in about 4,200 companies, and out of those, 1,000 plus has gone IPO. And we have about 8.5 billion under management right now, and we have 130 employees. And out of those, maybe 40 people are in the investment division. So investment staff, we have about 40. So as a typical VC, let me just introduce you about our activities. So we are Japan focused, so we invest mainly in Japanese startups or startups that are founded by Japanese founders. And we enter typically in the seed or early stage, and we make follow-on investments during the course of development of the company's business. Our average ticket size, our total ticket size per company is about 4.5 million US dollars. And we typically take the lead position in the round. So we have about 10 to 20% stake, and we are acting as a lead investor. We sit on many of the boards of the companies. And our coverage is very broad, so we go anywhere from entertainment to B2B SaaS to GX startups. And our investment in climate tech or GX startups right now consists of like maybe 10% of our total portfolio right now. And our fund life is about 10 years, and we can extend another 2 years. So in the 10 to 12 years time frame, we need to make the returns on this investment. So this is quite a challenge for investing in GX startups right now. And I haven't put anything on the slides, but let me just touch on our GX investment right now. So during over the 20 years since 2005, we have invested in 36 companies related to GX or climate tech. And out of those 36 companies, 12 companies have given us a positive return. So it's, the success rate is about 25%, so it's not very high. And our lessons learned from our investment activities in the GX area right now is that, to state the obvious, it takes a lot of time for the technology to mature, and also it takes a lot of time for the company to be able to generate stable revenue, because maybe this is due to the, because the companies that we invested in the past were mainly focused in the Japanese market. So it took time for the Japanese market, domestic market, the demand side to materialize. And from that, our current activities right now, our challenges is based on how to address the global market using the technology that is developed by our portfolio companies. And also because the company has to rely on a lot of external funding, our second challenge is how to take on these external funding, not just from like PE or VC, but probably funding like from government or debt funding. So this is the second challenge that we're facing right now. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tomoko, for your presentation. So now let us hear your story, Georgi, please.
Good morning. Ohayou gozaimasu. Thanks very much. So yeah, I'm Georgi, Chief Financial Officer of Zero Avia, a leader of clean aviation, global leader, at least we want to be one. And before I'll tell you more about the company, let me speak about the problem. Can I have the slides, please? Great. So what we're addressing emissions in aviation. So overall, aviation right now emits around 2–3% of CO2. Which by different measures, of course, it's significant, but now there are many other industries which emits much more. However, if you start measuring from the human impact standpoint, and actually it's much higher, it's 5–10% globally, so it's very significant. And the reason for that is pretty straightforward. So we obviously fly at 30,000 feet, and the emissions in the upper layers of atmosphere have got actually outsized impact on overall greenhouse effect. So it's not just about CO2, it's about the nitric oxides, it's about the contrails and many others. However, the situation actually is expected to worsen. So we fly more, the world is likely getting more prosperous, and therefore there's a higher cadence to fly. So also, by the way, let me remind you, the technology which we fly on, the aircraft which we fly on, it's from 1960s. So overall, while there was some transformation since then, but not much disruption has happened. So therefore, this is one of the least disrupted sectors globally. And clearly, if the situation continues this way, which will not be acceptable, aviation might emit up to the half of all global emissions by 2050. So that's our #1 target. So when we were founded, and we were founded in 2017 in California, I'll tell you a bit more about this. So we looked at different modalities of what is available right now, what technology is right over there. So then there's plenty of, so for example, there's a lot of promise on battery electric. So for example, just the aircraft or the eVTOLs powered by battery. However, and the same with sustainable aviation fuels. However, we believe the hydrogen electric technology is the most scalable. So if you look at the current physics of battery electric, it's very difficult to scale it to the larger aircraft. So unless the physics will change, so overall, you can't really fly in the longer range flights using batteries. Sustainable aviation fuels and a lot of promise, a lot of airlines ultimately told them that they're going to move to the sustainable aviation fuels, so-called SAF. However, there are bottlenecks. So first of all, the cost is prohibitively high. #1, there are bottlenecks of production. #2, and overall, it's can be competing with agriculture. So net might not be as clean solution as it's plans to be, or is it being projected? Because at the end of the day, it still uses combustion engines, and therefore the CO2 and other gases being emitted during the flight. Now, we're not saying that hydrogen electric will be the only solution. Most likely, in 10 or 15 years' time, we'll be flying on the different modalities. And urban aviation will be on, let's say, battery electric. Maybe in a 747 or the 350s, Airbus 350 will start using just SAF or e-fuels. But overall, the hydrogen electric, we believe, is the future of the aviation. So now let me tell you about ZeroAvia right now. As I mentioned, we were founded in the US, so in California in 2017, so we're only 7 years old. I think our birthday is coming in exactly 1 month time, give or take. So we still maintain our presence in California, so it's like a proverbial garage, if you want, so as many other big companies were founded. We grew since then. Our main operations right now is in state of Washington, and very close to the Boeing facility, so like lots of lessons learned, and trying to work with the big guys in the industry as well. However, since then we grew quite significantly, and we've got a significant presence in the UK as well. And I'll tell you a bit more. I think UK is one of the good examples of how governments can help. And Her Excellency Monaghan already mentioned RA, and I can elaborate a bit later about this in the US. So we are, Anglo-American group right now, but now very proud of our American roots. We have the few products. The main product is the powertrain itself, i.e. the engine. So hydrogen electric. We're already in certification stage, and again, I'll tell you a bit more about that. But what we also realized, since we invested a lot of capital into the research and development, we realized that the subcomponents of our hydrogen electric powertrain can also be used in other modalities of aviation, or actually in other industries as well, be it marine or many others. So we also enable, therefore, other modalities like battery electric, hybrid electric, eVTOL. We hope to be the first company in the world to fly hydrogen electric rotorcraft, helicopter, and we started exploring some other opportunities as well. That's just the chart of how our technology looks like, so maybe just a couple of words about this. Hydrogen, and hopefully green hydrogen, is stored on board. Then ultimately it's been infused into the fuel cells. There's a reaction over there, and there are only two byproducts. Ultimately, one is water and electricity. And electricity powers the electric motor, electric propulsion system. That's about it. So the technology actually was in the world, since pretty much 1980s. However, what we've done in ZeroAvia, we perfected it to such a condition that it can be used on aircraft, and it can be scaled, and it can be used, more importantly, on large aircraft as well, not just on the small ones. And you can see in the top right angle, that's how our main product, 600 kilowatt powertrain, looks like. It's obviously much larger, but that's the one which is undergoing certification. And more importantly, actually, I will switch to this first. We fly, but maybe I'll first tell about the impact. So I think that's actually a very similar slide to my colleagues, but overall, if we use the green hydrogen on board, we can cut down 95% of CO2 emissions from aviation, which is obviously a lot. But more importantly, there's no green premium, and I think that's what we discussed before. So the biggest struggle, I think, one of the struggles of startup is kind of not define or defend this kind of the whole green premium notion. There's no green premium over here. So overall, the hydrogen, as also as Her Excellency Monaghan said, so will be cheaper than jet fuel. And also the maintenance of the electric propulsion system is significantly easier than the combustion one. So we believe, therefore, to operate our product, our powertrains will be 40% cheaper than the comparable combustion engines. I mentioned to you we fly. So we flew our first prototype in 2020, which was a two-seater Piper. That was the first hydrogen electric aircraft to take into the air. And I think we about donated to the Science Museum in London, so whoever will be visiting London will be able to take a look. That's our larger aircraft, so it's a 20-seater Dornier 228. We flew in January 2023, and now it's undergoing active certification. So we believe we'll be able to certify this powertrain, 600 kilowatt powertrain, by the end of 26. So about the stages, so we are past the prototype, past the test, but we're right at the cusp of a start of the commercialization stage. We obviously don't want to stand on this, and that's what we're doing right now. So our next big project is the 2 megawatt powertrain, which will be able to take into the air something like a 100-seater. So this one is the Q400 with Alaska Airlines, who's one of our investors. And this is the 76-seater, which we're actually working right now. So we did already the ground spin. So now it's just to ensure that the weight of the system is good enough to get this aircraft into the air. By the way, it's not only about the turboprops, whoever understands aviation. So we work with the Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. So I'm super happy to say that's obviously a Japanese conglomerate on regional jets as well. So we put the paper out saying that the regional jets, so turbojet technology can be used with hydrogen as well, and that will be our follow-on project. Very quickly, roadmap. So again, and as I mentioned, so we're not just the idea, but we're actively trying to commercialize ourselves. So we started supplying our fuel cell systems to different customers. Inverters are ready as well, and we're hoping to finish the electric propulsion systems by the end of next year. We'll be able to already start selling next year in bulk, not just fuel cells, but also the motor and inverters. And as I mentioned, so the 600 kilowatt powertrain is undergoing active certification in US and UK, and we're hoping to be at the commercial stage by the end of 2026. And lastly, I really like this slide actually. Oh, maybe not lastly, one more type. So some of the questions I received from the investors saying how we'll be supplying hydrogen. We obviously understand this, and therefore we're working with a number of energy companies and airports. For example, Shell is our shareholder, and we've got MOUs with around 20 airports globally. And therefore, there's a roadmap how to supply hydrogen as well. But obviously, that's the big industry which we're trying to disrupt, and the help is necessary. But there are no obstacles which we won't be able to overtake. And again, we can talk about challenges. And lastly, on Japan, so our technology is obviously global technology, but I'm super glad to be here because Japan, in the past 100 years, has been known as a country of innovation. And therefore, we're trying to actively work in Japan as well. So I already mentioned Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. Itochu was one of the lead investors in our Series C. And we're working with Japan Airlines, and there are many things which we can do in the country, which is so known for its R&D, manufacturing, and the testing capabilities as well. But more importantly, the geographical nature of Japan. So let's say, I guess, the longest distance will be, don't tell me if I'm wrong, it's from Okinawa to the top of Hokkaido, to Kurils, is something like 1,300 nautical miles. And with our 2 megawatt powertrain, we're very close to that. So, our powertrains will be able to take care of all the length of Japan and hopefully, enable the clean flight in Japan. Okay. Shall we talk about challenges or a bit later?
Probably later. That would be great. Thank you for very comprehensive work, and then the challenges and opportunities in the aviation decarbonization. Thank you. So now we'd like to go to Shio, and he's a capitalist in the U.S. Please tell us your story, Shio.
Hey everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. Really, really great to be able to talk to you all. I'll give you a quick introduction of lower carbon and myself, and then I can talk to you a little bit about some of the challenges we see in this space. And I realize my head must be really, really big in the conference room. I apologize. No one should probably have to look at my face this large. Lower carbon capital, as the name implies, focuses completely on all kinds of technology that can help decarbonize our world. And we really divide this up roughly into 3 categories. I think the first is to look at all the wonderful things our civilization needs and think about ways to make them faster, better, cheaper, but also in a more sustainable fashion. And this is a really, really hard challenge that I'll go into a little bit later because of the demands of meeting that kind of market demand, finding solutions that don't necessarily have a green premium or cause the customer any kind of hardship. The second area we look into is looking at how we can economically remove greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. There's obviously too much carbon dioxide, too much methane, too much other gases that are causing our planet to warm up. And if there are ways to extract this, this strategy can work in parallel as we decarbonize our economy in order to prevent some of the larger and more destructive parts of climate change over the next centuries. And the final section that we really like to focus on is adaptation, right? Roughly recognizing that the first two things we mentioned are really, really hard. And even if we're 100% successful, it still means that we still have probably 100, 150 years of really disruptive weather and new climate challenges that face all of humanity. And in order for our civilization to persist and thrive, we need to adapt to this new reality. And this could mean everything from cooling technology to help people that need to work outside, to alternative ways to think about insurance as we combat increasingly active storm seasons and wildfires. We are very active in the early stages, pre-seed and seed, and there are no such thing as companies that are too early stage for us. And our fund also has the ability to really support our founders throughout the entirety of their journey, which means when we partner with them, we really think about this as a 10-year relationship, and we'd really like to support them through the Series A, B, C, and other future rounds until they reach that place where this is a commercializable, almost boring technology in the world. I'll quickly introduce myself a little bit. I fundamentally don't believe that most people care about things. They mostly care about people. I think that's just the way people are evolved. And so maybe knowing something about me will help you understand why I do the things I do and why I'm very, very passionate about this space. I think like a lot of people in the world, and specifically like a lot of Americans in the world, I confuse professional success with love. And I think I always try to work really, really hard because I'm trying to make up for a lack of love in my life. I think I don't deserve the better things in life unless I do something magical, like save the world. And so in a lot of ways, I think the best part of my job right now is I kind of get to save the world. I was a founder before. I know what it's like to create a business from scratch. I know how difficult it is. And it's that empathy for the founder process that I try to inject into my day-to-day life. And I think really understanding what the founders go through can really help us make sure that these companies can be successful, because it is a very, very hard space to be successful in. I'll transition a little bit to some of the challenges I see really around this one core challenge, which is I don't want to be overly romantic or optimistic about what we're really talking about. And one of my frustrations with people who really work in climate tech or conferences like this generally is it's easy in this setting to believe that the entirety of the world cares about anything that we are talking about. It is unfortunately my experience that nobody cares. And when it comes down to it, people don't want to spend more money. They don't want to be inconvenienced. And the natural default pathway is that we will slowly kill ourselves over the next couple thousand years. And that may be the default still. It is really, really challenging to build strong businesses that also make the world a better place and respect the climate. It's a lot like if you get into a fight with someone and you try to fight with dignity and honor. You don't want to hit them in the eyes. You don't want to punch them in their privates. You want to really just have a fair fight. But this other person, they will use any possible means to kill you. I think that's capitalism, right? People just want the cheapest thing. They want the best thing. They want the fastest thing. And if you have to do that on top of making it sustainable, that is really, really difficult. And there's a small fraction of technologies today that can actually deliver the things that people actually want without requiring them to pay a little bit more or to care a little bit more. And it's that small fraction of technologies and businesses that we have to be intensely focused on. And we can't have any romantic ideals about what will actually support in the market. And so as an investor, a lot of times what we spend a lot of time on is really understanding the techno-economics of the business. And how does this actually lead to the same kind of exciting business dynamics that we would expect, even if we didn't care about the environment. And these are the things that really speak to the eventual partners and customers that our founders face. These are the things that appeal to the most base and fundamental feelings in human beings, that greed, that thirst for power, the desire to control people. Those factors are the things I really, really believe in when I look to make investments into new companies and new technologies. Anyway, thanks for listening to me, and I'm excited to share more with everyone.
Thank you, Shuo. And then thank you, everyone, the panelists. I think, we heard that starting from the last, we had the really harsh, but then very realistic, recognition of the state of the world with regard to the decarbonization and green techs and the startups. But also, we also heard from both, capitalist side and then the entrepreneur side, scalings and sufficient fund and so on. So I think, kind of audience is probably interested in really learning about and then also the startup entrepreneurs here, they are very successful. So we want to hear next, what kind of policy support or the other support which may be coming from the ecosystem that you see really important for scaling up, especially at the last stage of commercializing the GX technologies. So, but not only from the startup entrepreneurs, but that we like to also hear from the capitalists as well. So, going back to Shinya, can you speak a little bit?
So, thank you. I want to say, so rather than the actual specific policies, I want to say, so what should be the target of policies? So that is success stories. So that's my belief. So because of the lack of success stories, so people are not seeing or explaining the realistic dreams for decarbonizing the world. So one thing that is happening in Japan currently is the venture capitals are kind of trying to shrink their fans. Over the past 10 years, the Japanese venture capitals and venture investment has been increasing rapidly, but over the past 3 years, it's stagnating, and people are kind of considering to shrink their fans, which means so we're kind of starting to giving up building a global large companies, because over the past 5 or 3 years, so we're not seeing sufficient amount of globally successful startups from Japan. So they cannot explain we need big fans to big global large companies. So that is kind of typical chicken and egg problem. So because we believe so we can build global for example, GX, global big company. So because we believe it, so we can get investment. Because we have investment, we can build a global big company. So that is a typical chicken and egg problem, which is kind of starting into a kind of negative feedback cycle in Japan, which is really concerning. So in addition to that, let me add some kind of shocking figure here. Japanese university startups doesn't have appropriate ecosystem around universities. So one figure here is 5-year survival rate from university startup in the United States is 1.8% or less than 2%, but in Japan it is 99% survival rate. So which can include some stochastic, tricks, but which really makes sense for me because in Japanese universities there's no ecosystem to grow the idea big, I would say. So they are not seeing dreams. So if you in the United States you find a kind of game-changing technology, so let's commercialize it. Let's build a big factory. Let's build a big business plan to make it de facto standard to change the world. But in Japan, unfortunately, so there's a kind of game-changing technology. So let's make it some a kind of small, profitable business from new technologies. So which is kind of shocking figure, right? So that's all because we don't have success stories. So we cannot see, and we cannot explain the dream of great success. We need to make it to a global big. So while saying it, so I think that is partially because of my failures, so my bad. So because, I should be a founder that is showing the successful role model. If I sat here as a kind of successful entrepreneur that is already making billions of profit, that is so currently, so Japanese startup ecosystem has, would be so different. So, but my point here is, so whatever the policy is, whatever the supporting program is, so the target should be how to build successful stories, successful great stories to follow, to be able to make another big company. So that's my point.
Thank you. Probably, what are the things we can learn from the U.S. or in the case Georgi, London included, to address kind of challenges that Shinya explained.
Sure, of course. No, so maybe then I can talk about the policies at least which we benefited from. So one more time, we're a U.S. company, but with a significant presence in the UK, and ultimately. The US and UK approach, or British approach, were actually quite different, and it's very interesting. So let's start from Britain. So the reason why from California and Washington State we established operations in the UK was pretty straightforward. The UK government, through Aerospace Technology Institute, found our technology very innovative and realized the potential of change the industry. And we were the early recipients of the grant from the, if you want, from the UK government, but officially through ATI, Aerospace Technology Institute, which ultimately funded around 50–60% of our R&D costs, which actually, obviously, for startup, it can be quite significant. So can you imagine then talking to your investors and telling, look, so your capital, in effect, or return on your capital can be multiplied because 50–60% of cost can be taken out. Obviously, it's a very rigorous process what we got, and ultimately it's been quite successful in deploying this capital, and we're very thankful for to ATI and the UK government in general for supporting us early. However, I think where maybe in the UK the question becomes is what to do when you want to commercialize, and also what to do when you grow up. And in the US, the situation was almost, well, if not opposite, but a definitely continuation of the other. So we're also recipients of some of the grants of the US, which are focused on R&D. And for example, we are recipient on a grant from NASA, from FAA, which is a federal aviation agency, obviously the regulator, and for us, it's phenomenal. But what Her Excellency Monahan told, the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, is the game changer in that country. So ultimately, startups like ourselves, like us, can apply for the grants for the growth of the manufacturing. So ultimately, when you have high TRL, and then so we're in the process, for example, of this Title 17 program, which I think was mentioned as well. So overall, it's a game changer because a startup like ours can draw funds from the UK government, from the US government in a debt form. So which obviously then becomes the next growth, as we mentioned already, and also grow and stack your capital structure. And then these loans are given at around Treasuries +1, which is at this point of time a sub 5%. So you can imagine it's the multiple times lower than our cost of capital. And if we're successful in receiving it, that can you imagine we can build 80% of manufacturing through this financing. Obviously, the great example is Tesla, which actually was an early beneficiary of that and ultimately managed to use these funds very successfully. So this is, I think, that's what maybe Japan should look into now. So what's more important, funding of R&D or commercialization? For us, obviously, it's both because, Jingo-san already mentioned value of death. And that's ultimately, that's a problem which a lot of successful startups going through.
Thank you. So from the capitalist side, I think, for the scaling, and then what do you need to see for you to, Georgi was saying that, grant money to boost the manufacturing. But then after that, what do you need to see as a kind of capitalist, if you can add, onto that to really help the scaling up? And then after that, show, please.
Okay, so as Georgi mentioned, we need some ways to raise double-digit or triple-digit millions of capital without, jeopardizing your cap table. That's one important thing. And the other one is, for the government, I would like to say that we need the government to make sure that the demand sticks, and the startups will be able to, generate healthy revenue quickly, And because when we invested in a lot of PV-related companies in 2005 and 2006, the market was mainly government-driven. And afterwards, the domestic market, the non-government market didn't stick. They kind of, the Japanese market got like, dominated by Chinese people or Chinese technology. So we need the government to make sure that they support the demand side of the market.
Thank you. What about Shuo? Shuo, do you have something to add?
I just echoing what was just said, government money can be extremely misleading. I think it's important to understand where policy and regulation and government support can be an accelerant, an additive to make what is already a healthy foundation grow faster. But it can't actually fundamentally create the market dynamics that make for a good business. And especially in business categories that I feel like are over propped up by government intervention, that's actually kind of scary because the moment that the government funding goes away, it's really, really hard to determine if there is an actually sound business there. I think even in spaces where there may be a sound business and there also just happens to be a lot of government funding, this can make it also very, very confusing for investors because oftentimes the companies that actually get government funding or government support, it's hard to tell why those companies get it. It's not necessarily always that the best team or the best product wins. Oftentimes this is due to other things like human connections or whose brother works where. And in those kind of industries, it starts to become very, very hard to choose then who is the right team and who is the right technology that is going to be the winner in that space.
Thank you, Shuo. That's true. I think one of the things we heard is that Shuo, you mentioned is that kind of how to have a really healthy market mechanism going on for both capitalists and also startups. But then in the case of the PV panels, it took 30 years. If it was let the market to bring the prices really coming down, but then we don't have that 30 years anymore for the innovative technologies. So what do you see, in the U.S. or the London or the U.K. or the Europe or even in Japan, any really successful policy work or the public sector money to really help the healthy a market mechanism to work and then help the technology to be
Sure.
commercialized?
Thank you. Yeah, so it's, I think let's not forget what we're doing. So green transition, we're going after big industries. So we're not solving small problems. So wherever Shinya said science, materials, another speaker was talking about the steel industry, we're trying to tackle aviation. So can a really startup of, let's say, 300 people like ours, can we really change the aviation? Maybe, but we need help, most likely. And the help, I'm also, by the way, if anything, I'm all up for the market forces, but the helps can come from other things. So for example, we're trying to change infrastructure, the global infrastructure. So 100 airports, that's the 90% of the aviation traffic, they ultimately need help, but also if we are really to switch from the jet fuels, for example, to the clean aviation. By the way, not necessarily hydrogen, but even battery electric, you still need to have the charging facilities, you need to have the green electricity and so forth. It's very difficult to do it on your own. So I think that's where the government actually comes extremely well. So again, I mentioned IRA, obviously Inflation Reduction Act is a great help. So for example, in the UK right now, we're also beneficiary of the investment from the UK government as well. And they ultimately told us, no, so please create your manufacturing facilities in the regions where there's an oversupply of electricity, which I think is pretty smart because electricity is not easily storable, obviously. So therefore, it's actually, maybe it's a coincidence that it happened in such a harmonious way. But I think that definitely the government mechanisms which would be enable adoption, because at the end of the day, apart from funding, adoption becomes the largest challenge, because we're changing the status quo and we're changing it in the big industries.
I'd like to probably, ask just a little bit like from a different angle. Earlier, the panel was really talking about the increasing the demand side, and then demand increase is really crucial for, especially for commercialization. And then for the, I think any support, do you see in the market, Japan or the US, UK, or the Europe and other countries, like, what kind of like, support you are really seeing to really stimulate the demand side? And then at the end of the day, by doing so, you can also help the project to stabilize the cash flow, which is really good for the capitalist. Shiro, do you have any comment?
I really like what the Canadian government has done with some of their technology insurance programs. At a high level, I think, to me, the way I see it is governments can help make risky things seem really, really boring. And they can make this process in which we convert risky things into the most boring things a lot faster and smoother. And with technology insurance, one of the ways they do that is they guarantee investors and early partners a set rate of return so that people can start actually putting in money right when these technologies need the most help, typically around the first of the kind or first commercial projects that can oftentimes be a very tough and arduous process. And so that really unlocks technologies and really helps de-risk the market and accelerates the process in which these things are now proven, and people can go say, yes, this thing is boring. If I put $1 into it, I'll collect $1.20 in a year. That's the kind of stuff then that other kinds of bankers and other institutions can flow into and then quickly accept the market exceptions.
Great, thank you. Other, please.
So as kind of successful government policies, I want to say INCJ's fund of funds strategy was underrated. I think that is kind of one of the successful policies because it can accelerate the generational progress of ecosystem. The ecosystem is the ecosystem. It needs some generations to make it big. But Japanese startup ecosystem is incredibly small. As a rate per GDP and other numbers, so it's small. So we need to make it big. But so how to accelerate the generational progress of ecosystem is there something that government can do. In that sense, INCJ fund of funds, which means they invest in their venture capitals as LPs to artificially make their fund size big. So which force VCs to make big companies to make big returns. So which is kind of simple fact, but I think it is a kind of powerful policies, and it's which is also underrated, I'd say.
Thank you. I think we have just a couple of minutes, but is anyone want to add to the discussion? Tomoko?
Unfortunately, we don't have INCJ money in our fund. But so to repeat myself, I would like to, for the people from the Japanese government today, to really think about how to create a stable economy in the GX industry in Japan, and also how to help the companies in Japan, the GX startups in Japan, to really take on the demand outside Japan, because this is very crucial. The Japanese companies, the large corporates in Japan, tend to be very, very conservative in adopting early technology. So in order to let the companies mature their technology, they have to go outside first to go through the the seed or pilot stage. So I would like to emphasize that we really should support these startups, not only tackling the Japanese economy, the industry, but also how to speed up their development and take on the global market.
Thank you.
Sure. Just echoing what Tomoko is saying, I think the biggest lesson, if anything, of the past 10, 15 years from outside of Japan, especially US, UK, and maybe China to some extent, is be bold. Because ultimately the task is massive. So not everything will work out, but as Yuchika is saying, so we don't have much time. So I think ultimately and if you look at the IRA, and by the way, so those who remember the debate whenever it was 5, 6 years ago in the US, they were saying, oh, it's going to be money spent for nothing. No, it's ultimately, if you look what the US is undergoing right now, it's becoming much less carbon intensive, number one. The number of jobs has been created is 300,000, as we heard, so there's already tangible effect. But they went bold. It's a $1 trillion program, which is clearly working.
Thank you, everyone. I think it's, today from the panel, we heard that size of the fund, basically like, provision of the appropriate size of the fund really matters. But then from the and then also the market mechanism, yes, the public funding is very, very important. But then like, can we provide the public funding in order, without really distorting the market mechanism so that like the market stays healthy for the startups to really keep growing? That be like worthy startups would grow into a unicorns and so on. And then also from the capitalist side, also more like encouraging word, meaning that kind of aim for a larger market. Japanese startups don't stay within Japanese market, but then seek for funding from overseas, and then look for a larger world as a kind of a market for startups too. So, and then at the end, I think I may say that everyone need to extra step forward, and then it could be taking an extra risk, or it could be taking being bold, and then looking at the future. But then if we do that collectively, we can we can do the decarbonization faster, and then much less cost. So with that, we'd like to close the panel. Thank you very much for all the panelists.
Thank you, Ms. Matsumoto and the panelists.